The best example, you probably remember seeing this, I use the example of the pencil.
I was gonna ask you about the pencil.
The pencil is just about one of the simplest things that you could use.
Yep.
It's 5 basic ingredients, right? You have the rubber, tip at the end, a metal band, a wooden shaft here with some paint and a graphite core. You have 5 basic ingredients. Now, we would never assume that the pencil could evolve by itself, right?
Well,
But
you just
so
were walking one day in the country and you looked down and there was a pencil on the ground.
Right, and and you and I would say, "Well, someone must have dropped a pencil."
But the evolutionist would say, no, that pencil created itself.
It came out of nothing. It's a miracle, evolutionary miracle. The analogy here is that what if you took all the raw materials, take the paint, the wood, the graphite core, the metal band, and the rubber at the end, put it all in a pile, and add 1,000,000 years. Is it possible for it to have to for a pencil to emerge from there? And the answer is no. But the question is, why is it no? Why is the answer no? Is because the raw materials cannot determine their own purpose. In other words, the pencil exists because man needed something to write with. So we invented it. We designed it, we engineered it, we manufactured it, and distributed it to be exactly what it is. But here is the punchline: is that neither can the individual proteins or amino acids or cells within your body, they can't determine their purpose either. And so in other words, who instructs these proteins that are coming together to become a heart cell or a liver cell or a kidney cell or a cell within your eye or anything? Who determined that? It is determined by the DNA. And the kicker here is that the DNA must exist first. It cannot be the result of evolution, because that's where all the instructions are. And so in this whole nonsense notion that life evolved from non-life, even with the development of the first cell, you still had to have DNA first, because that's where the instructions are.
Inscriptions, by the way, fit the idea of purpose very, very well. In other words, how are you going to do something is a very important part of creationism.
Absolutely. I mean, purpose is the key to everything. I
Yes.
mean, in my view, nothing exists without purpose. I invite your listening audience to just look around the room, the car, the office, the dorm room, wherever they happen to be. Look around at everything you see, everything. Your clothes, the carpet, the lights, the paint, everything in your world exists on purpose. Even a scrap of paper on the floor is not there accidentally. So nothing exists in our world randomly. It all exists on purpose to serve a purpose. And yet we're supposed to believe that comparable structures in nature are all just pure randomness and chance. We have to remember that the essence of evolution is that it is a process that by definition is unguided, undirected, with no plan and no purpose. And the logical mind, can't grasp that, and nor should they, because God gave us a sound mind with enough common sense, hopefully, to say, this doesn't pass the smell test. And purpose is the key to everything.
I'd like to ask you a question about time because in your presentation, you talk about the word instant. Was creation instant or did it take a long time? And so, how does time figure into this? Because evolutionists need lots of time.
Well, yeah. You see, I mean, there are many different ways to consider the age of the Earth. I mean, of course, there's the, what is it? I guess it's the radiometric, of measurement of rocks, which says it's 4.5 billion years old, but and that can vary depending on what part of the lava flow that you're measuring, and could vary by a billion years. But then also, there's other ways of determining the possible age of the Earth by the increasing salinity of the oceans, by the depletion of helium in the atmosphere, and so they all give different measurements. Now for me, I don't claim young Earth, old Earth. I don't care how old the Earth is, because I don't know. No one was there. Everyone has an opinion, and you know what they say about opinions. And so,
Yeah.
s- so my view is simply this. I really let me just say that in my experience, as I have learned this subject and read lots of books on it, and it's I used to be a young Earth guy. You believe that the Earth is 10,000 years old and all that. But then I saw a debate. This must be at least 14, 15 years ago now. A debate with Ken Ham and Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Yeah.
And I expected for this to be a slam dunk. But, I came away from that debate and they both scored points. And I would have if I was scoring it like as if some kind of boxing match, I would have to say there was probably a draw. And I said I came away saying, "Well, you know what? If I'm feeling that, Bill Nye had points and Ken Ham had points, then why am I spending all my time trying to prove a young Earth when really no one knows? Because there's just as many old Earth creationists as there are young Earth creationists. And so I don't want to waste all my time trying to defend something which we don't even know the answer to anyways. And so I'd much rather dismantle the lunatic suppositions of evolution, and then let people make a decision on their own whether they want to be young Earth, old Earth, and I have my position is I don't care, and it's whether it's young or old. It's all I know is that complexity, order, and design did not come about through an unguided random process. That is preposterous.
You mentioned that word, complexity again, and, that touches on another subject, which is reproduction, because, reproduction, cellular reproduction, human animal reproduction, very complex and had to proceed from the beginning until now, had to proceed in a very special way in order to work at all. And, the whole question of reproduction is rarely, mentioned in this argument.
No, I mean, reproduction is huge, especially, because this whole principle of natural selection, which Darwin, that's like his religion. It's right in the title of his book. Is he when so on the origin of species by means of natural selection. So, but what we know now about natural selection is that it is not a creative force. It really just preserved the integrity of the organism, so that it's able to root out harmful mutations. It doesn't have some innate knowledge to know that this mutation is going to be beneficial and this mutation is going to be bad. We'll keep the one that's good, and we'll get rid of the one that's bad. Natural selection doesn't have that capability. And so when you get into this issue of reproduction, you know, by mutation, allegedly there's a mutation that creates something that is beneficial to the species. But here's the problem: is that you're going to have two organisms in the same location at the same time with the exact same mutation, and then they gotta get romantic, and then at that point, then that mutation can be transferred to the next generation as a dominant trait. Now, you could see that this could happen once in a while, but to suggest that this happens on a grand scale is just ridiculous. And so
Mathematically.
Yeah, mathematically, in fact, speaking of mathematics, by the way, the probability of a single complex protein evolving by a random process is 1 in 10 to the 164th power, which means it's never going to happen. And yet that's their religion. The religion of atheism is built on just, you know, smoke, mirrors.